Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each episode I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I'm thrilled today to have my special guest, Maddie Fairchild, on with me. Maddie, tell everybody kind of who you are.
Yeah, well, my name is Maddie. I am a fifth grade. I taught everything but math, but I'm really a fifth grade language arts teacher, and I love teaching social studies, but I won't teach it again next year, which kind of makes me sad. But I'm in North Texas, and yeah, just kind of living that fifth grade teacher life.
There we go. Fifth grade was my favorite year to teach. So I already, have this connection with you because I'm like, I love fifth grade students. And so, but Maddie, I want to start back at the beginning for you. And so when you were a kid, what did you grow up dreaming you were going to be? And does it align at all with what you're doing now?
Well, I come from a family of all educators. My dad's a high school football coach. My mom's an administrator. My stepmom's been in the classroom forever. And so I always kind of knew like, oh, I could probably do that just because I saw all the behind the scenes. But really when I was in kindergarten, I wanted to be a tennis player because I liked their skirts. So when I kind of figured out that I don't really like tennis, I had this great kindergarten teacher, and I'm pretty sure that I was her first ever class. She was a first year teacher, and her name was Miss Bond, and she just rocked kindergarten, and she made me want to be a teacher because she was just so amazing. And she was just so sweet, and she smelled good. Like she was just everything that a teacher needed to be in kindergarten.
Yeah. There's two things you said there that I find hilarious. One of them is, as kids, we always have these dreams of like what we want to be until we learn like what those things really are like. And then you're like, oh no, that's not what I thought it was. I don't want to be that anymore. But then also, even at our youngest ages, like at 5 and 6 years old in kindergarten, teachers can leave that impact that is felt years later and really helps form the course for you. And so, when you think about, you've been in teaching now for a couple of years. And so for you, what do you feel like you've really learned about yourself since being an educator?
Yeah. So going back to Miss Bond, like she was picture perfect and she always smelled good. And I tried to be that my first year of teaching and I couldn't. And so I really learned that when I started to embrace my imperfections and my just mess of a mess, that it was way easier for me to connect with my students and actually get on a different level with them. And then that's when the academics really started to hit the ground running because it was like we were a family almost, because I wasn't afraid to like kind of just show them who I really was. And I think that once I let that barrier down as a teacher, it completely transformed my classroom, especially with fifth graders, because they're just a special group.
They are. And speaking of fifth grade, when you decided that teaching was for you, did you have an age range in mind that you really wanted to work with?
Yeah, I really wanted to work with first grade and first or second grade. And now being a fifth grade teacher, and even like my teacher bestie, she's a first grade teacher. And I tell her all the time, like, I couldn't do it. I originally was applying for a second grade job and got the fifth grade position. And I'm so grateful I did. I love those older kids.
It's so funny because I can relate to that, because when I knew I was going to be a teacher and I was doing my student teaching and instructional aid work and all that, I was like, it's kindergarten. Like, I love that age group. That's what I want to work with. And then I got a job teaching fourth, which then morphed into fifth grade. And I was like, what was I thinking? Like, this is the best. And now going back, it's like, I love to spend time with kindergartners. I don't know that I could teach them all day like I thought I could, but I could work with a fourth or fifth grader all day long for those reasons. Here too.
I covered a first grade class one time for 10 minutes for a teacher, and she came back and I was like, thank God you're back. They were just like doing independent work, but it was just like, wow.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you do language arts and things like that. So I've got to ask you, being a language arts teacher, what is a book that you've read lately that you just loved?
Oh, it's so hard.
I know.
It's really hard. You actually recommended the New Kid graphic novel by Jerry Craft, and I bought it as soon as I saw your Instagram post. And this was a while ago, and I read it like in one sitting. And I put it in my classroom because, I mean, I think all kids right now are just so into graphic novels, and I had to buy like several more copies because it just was like flying off the shelf. All like they just kept circulating it. So I love that one. And then there's another one that I read and fell in love with. I read it and then immediately the next week started it as a read aloud with my class called Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus.
Yes.
Bowling, and it is just, I love it. It's funny. It's like, it makes you feel all the things. And I think my favorite part about reading that aloud to my fifth graders was like, they don't really come out and say, like, the main character doesn't have any arms or legs, right? Yeah. And so they don't really come out and say it. Like, they just kind of give you like context clues. And so when they finally figure it out, they're like, wait, what? And it's just one of those books that's such an experience to read, especially and share it with your kids. So I love that one.
So I've got to address these two books since you brought them up, because first of all, I love New Kid, but for me, like, I've never been a huge graphic novel fan. Like, it was never something I got into, but I read Hey Kiddo, which is more for middle school and above. And then I read New Kid and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a graphic novel guy now, because New Kid was so good. And I'm pretty sure, if I hope I'm not saying this incorrectly, but I think he wrote a sequel too that's going to be coming out soon to New Kid. So I'm thrilled about that. But then you mentioned Dusty Bowling, who is one of my favorite people and authors. And I don't know if do you know there's a sequel to Insignificant?
Yes.
So I personally loved the sequel even more than the original. So it's so good. But yes, anybody listening, I don't care what age you teach, go read Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. It is so good. And then pick up the sequel, Momentous Events in the Life of a Cactus. You will not regret it. Oh, I could talk about books all day long. Okay, we've got to move on to other things because I only have you for 15 or 20 minutes. So my next question then is, when you think of, you had to go through, just like the rest of the world right now, COVID-19 and the unexpectedness of school being canceled and not getting an end of the year and things like that. So how did that affect you not having that wrap up at the end of the year and having to change the way you did everything?
Yeah, so it actually was like kind of the cherry on top of a hard year. I think this school year was one of those years, it's just like a complete roller coaster. And so the group of kids that we had, I really had felt like I finally had gotten them to a place where we were vibing, like they were being respectful and we were able to have these great deeper conversations. And then COVID happened. And so I was really bummed, especially as a fifth grade teacher. In Texas, they go off to sixth grade to middle school. And so there were just so many things that we had planned in that last quarter that we didn't get to do. And so it was really hard. I just, full transparency, was terrible online teacher. Like I didn't do it. Like I just was like in survival mode because it was so hard. And like, I just, my district, thank God, they had great lesson plans for us, and I would get on and just like interact with my kids. And that was really like the joy of every single week was like, okay, I get to, even if it was like 12 kids, I would see them and talk with them and connect with them in that way. And, or the one-on-one phone calls from the kid who didn't do any work. So you're like, hey, I haven't gotten anything from you. And then you spend 15 minutes on the phone talking about their cat or something, It was like really hard on me to not have the great parts of teaching and have to do all the icky parts of teaching, like all the emails and all the paperwork and all that stuff. But those little moments really, really, really helped me because it already was a hard year. And then it was just like one more thing. So this group of kids though, like I know probably everyone listening doesn't know them, but they're like, I'm forever etched on my heart for being like some of the most resilient, funny, hot mess of a group, but they did it. So, and it was just kind of a joy to be able to lead them through that, but definitely hard.
Well, and you said something there that I think a lot of people will connect with is you said, I wasn't a very good online teacher. And the reason I bring that back up is I've talked to countless educators through this time, and all of us feel the same way because, you had to make that transition at the toss of a dime, like at the drop of a hat. And so, not only are you how learning how to do things completely different than what you've been trained to do, but then they want you to be perfect right away. And so I think it's huge that you were at least in an area where they were helping provide lesson plans and things like that. But I think everybody can relate to that. And I love what you said too, because I hadn't thought of it this way, but you said it and it totally connected that, you as teachers, you had to do the icky parts, the emails and the writing of the lesson plans and the recording of the lessons. You didn't get to do the fun parts of the interacting with kids in person and getting to do hands-on stuff with them and conversations where the whole class was there and not just whoever showed up or had Wi-Fi that day. And so I think that I love those reflections because it's real. It's what people went through. And so, moving into the fall and with both of us being in Texas, I know many districts in our area haven't announced what they're doing yet and how it's going to look. So how are you preparing yourself mentally for what's to come?
So I kind of did some reflecting at the end of the year of just like what went really well, what did I really like doing? Like I did a great characterization lesson that, that's always something that's going to come back up. So just kind of things that I know worked well, and doing a little bit more, looking into more fun activities to do virtually. Because I'm on Instagram, so I see all of these amazing teachers doing like, all of these awesome things with their classes that I just didn't really get to because I was in survival mode. But also kind of just taking a step back and really being mindful of the fact that like it is summertime and normally I would not be worried about next school year right now in June, which I know is hard, but it's kind of out of my control right now. Yeah. And so I'm doing things that I know that will benefit me in the future. Like I'm relabeling all of my library books right now and doing things that I know I won't regret, because during summer, you're like, I'm going to do all these projects for the beginning of the year. And like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do those things. And so I'm trying to kind of be okay with not necessarily having the same type of beginning of the year activities as I normally do and doing things almost like more housekeeping things that I know will benefit me and I'm not going to regret doing them in the long run.
I love that. Well, Maddie, you also mentioned there that, you're pretty active on social media and sharing the things that you're doing. And one question that I always love to dive into in these conversations is, as we connect and learn with other people, whether that's on campus or virtually, you find people who are doing such incredible work. And at times it can make you sometimes start to doubt your own skills or wonder like, gosh, they're so much better than I am, or I wish I was as good as them, or should I even be sharing this? Is my voice that important to be putting this out there? Like, how do you yourself deal with that comparison and keep doubt from taking root in your life?
Yeah, that's really hard, especially on the Instagram platform because, and I tell myself this all the time, Instagram was literally created to be visually appealing, right? So like you're not gonna be successful on Instagram if it doesn't at least look a little nice. Yeah. And so a lot of times I have to just take a step back. I really, even people I love, I'll mute them, even if it's for a few days, just so that I know that I can go back when I'm in a better headspace and really take it in, and where I'll use the little save button. But it's really hard not to compare yourself, especially with people who you've like met in real life, like at Get Your Teach On and stuff like that. You're like, how do they have so much energy right now? Like I'm dying, and she's so cute and she's doing all the things, and then just kind of taking a step back and realizing people probably also think that about me, and trying to be transparent and use that platform as a way to make it normal to be normal and not necessarily be this teacher celebrity that I think it's kind of a thing, and I think that it's been really awesome for me, and I've been able to connect with a lot of people in the sense of just being transparent and real. And saying things like, I don't have the energy to do that right now. I'm not using, cute downloaded teacher pay teachers fonts. I'm really just using Century Gothic, and it's okay. It's getting the same thing across, and being okay with knowing that it's not about likes, it's not about followers, it's about my kids and what my kids needed. And I think that's how I really kill that comparison bug, because someone's kids in New York are going to need something so much different than my kids. And so I think that's definitely one way that I have to take my step back. I talk to myself a lot. And so good and bad. So if I feel myself going down like a rabbit hole of comparison and getting annoyed with someone who hasn't even done anything but share something, it's my responsibility to mute it, or, it's not their fault that I'm insecure. It's my fault. And it's something that I need to fix it myself. So I've definitely tried to focus on that.
I think you said something really powerful there that I want to repeat. And that was, knowing yourself well enough to know that when some kind of content or some account is making me begin to feel less than, not because they're trying to do that, but because I'm in a moment where that is making me feel less than, to take that initiative to say, I'm just going to mute them for just a little while. Like because I know for me, like that's exactly what I need to do, because I don't have the self-control to skip over their posts. I'll want to go, okay, well, I'll look at it now, and then like, crap, now I feel even worse because I'm looking at this again and comparing myself. Whereas then when you're muting it and not being able to see it at all, it's like, let me get back to where I'm in that good headspace, and then I can go and unmute them, and they never know, and you're not hurting anybody's feelings, and it's not anything personal. It's you knowing your weaknesses and how to protect yourself so that you can be better. And so I love that you shared that, because I think that's something that people need to hear, that it's okay to remove yourself from certain situations when you know it's doing more damage than good, and you know that that person is not trying to cause you damage. Like if that person is trying to cause you damage, then you better unfriend them, block them, like all that kind of stuff. But if it's just your own insecurity that's getting in the way, then you've got to put some things in place. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, Maddie, when you look at your own life and the people who've played a part into creating the woman we see today, who's somebody that you know was really instrumental in that? And just as a side note, this is not meant to offend anybody who is listening and doesn't get mentioned right now by Maddie. This is just me asking her to think of one person who's been instrumental into creating the woman we see today.
That's so hard. It's so hard because there's so many people. I would probably have to say my mom. So my parents got divorced when I was really little, and my stepmom and my dad got remarried also when I was really little. But my mom and I have like this crazy relationship story. It's like the normal teenage mom and teenage girl story, but like on steroids. Like I was so awful to her in high school, and then I turned out just like her, you know, like, and so I just have seen her go through the ringer a few times, especially in the world of education, and just see her come out and truly just be about kids. And it, you know, she will get pushed down 1,000 times, and every single time she gets back up for the kids. And she's just the strongest woman I know, and I try so hard. She's so kind, which is crazy to me. Like, I'm like, how are you so kind? Like, people are being kind to you. And so I think that she has really taught me how to use integrity, especially in the education space, and truly be kid-minded of like, okay, well, what's the best thing for the kids? And if that means using my voice, how to do it in a way that is grace and truth together so that the kids are being taken care of, but also you're not offending anyone in the process. So she's just the bomb. I love her.
I love that. Well, Maddie, as we wrap up, the one question I always love to end these conversations on is, you know, I believe as people, there are things we hold true to our hearts and are the foundation of who we are. And so for anybody who's been listening or watching today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing be for them?
Oh, wow. I think that it's okay to be human and be a teacher. There's room for both. And I think that that's something that I'm really passionate about is finding ways to make sure teachers are taken care of in the human sense of just checking in and making sure that their needs are being met, because you can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way my first few years of teaching. And so I think that's my biggest, if I could die on a soapbox, it would be that one. Like, we're human and you're allowed to have human emotions, and we need to find ways to help teachers manage those emotions so that they can be as amazing as they truly are.
I love that. And that is the perfect way to end this conversation. Maddie, I have so enjoyed getting to talk with you. So thank you for spending a few minutes with me today on Tell Your Story.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Maddie has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.